I'm going to open up with an illustration. I love animal shows, Wild Kingdom. If it's a wild cat that can kill a gazelle or an elephant, I eat that stuff up. My wife's like, why do you like all that blood? And I'm just like, I don't know. That's why I like ultimate fighting. I like a winner and a loser. So I was watching a show on the Discovery Channel about a dog that was injured. Listen to this. This is deep. And they put a camera on the dog. And when people would come in the pet store during the day, even though the dog was injured, it would go, and it would do whatever it could to get the patron's attention. Check it out, y'all. But when the store closed, they left the camera on the dog. And when it was dark in the pet store, the dog would limp around like this. And when I heard that illustration, I said that illustration is a lot like the spirit of many men. We're in situations where when the lights are on, we're constantly forced to be on. Don't show weakness. Don't show weakness at work. Don't show weakness. If you show weakness at home, you're scared that it's going to be too much for your wife to handle. It's going to be too much for your kids to handle. And when people are watching us, but when we get to ourselves and we get by ourselves, oftentimes, like the dog, we feel the weight of what we're carrying. We feel the weight of what's hindering our walk. And I want to talk about biblical masculinity because I thank God so much for Dr. Price's message. Oftentimes, and I'm not a pastor. I'm what's known as a teacher, or I guess you might say an evangelist. And I do meetings. I don't have a church that I pastor weekly. But I've noticed that oftentimes, unintentionally, and I thank God that Dr. Price is an exception to this, but being more Christian is often equated with being more feminine. Or the church service is so geared towards the feminine side of the gospel, and men come there and say, what's in it for me? I'll give you an example. I'm not being flippant, but we sing songs like, I could sing your love forever. And if you're a guy, it feels like that's what we're doing. It feels like we're singing that song forever. Men don't connect with those songs all the time, but a lot of the worship songs, again, this church is the exception, a lot of the worship songs, a lot of the orientation of the service is very geared towards women. But I started a journey about 5 years ago, and I said to myself, what does the Bible say about the guy who wants to excel at his job? What does the Bible say about the guy who wants to build something like a Nehemiah? What does the Bible say about the guy who's a public success, but he's struggling in his personal life of his family, like David? What does the Bible say about a guy who keeps doing right, but wrong keeps happening to him? My favorite character, bar none, I cannot wait to get to heaven. While you cats are lined up to talk to Paul, I'm going to be kicking it with my man Joseph, because he is my favorite Bible character. His story is found in Genesis 37 to Genesis 50, and he's a guy, listen to me, who kept doing right with wrong happening to him. In other words, he kept coming home to work on the marriage, but his wife had a picture of him 10 years ago that she wouldn't let go. He kept acting and maintaining his Christian values at work, but he never got the promotion. He kept bringing his kids to church and sending them to Christian camps, but they kept being wayward. He kept doing right, but wrong was happening back to him. What does the Bible say about that? So I started a long journey looking at these characters. Now, as we get into this discussion, one of the most prevalent things about biblical masculinity, as I see it, is the number one way that my life's been radically altered is one word: modeling. In other words, I played varsity basketball as a freshman. What did I do? I watched what the seniors did. My father has been married to my mother for 57 years. I had a model. When I worked on Wall Street, the man who ran the department sat next to me. But for most of us, most men in this room, you don't have a model. So you're being asked to play a role that you've never seen modeled for you. And this is why we want to get in the teeth and in the trenches of these biblical characters, because we can learn from it. And I don't want to use this as a license to sin, but you will see their humanity as I outlined it. And you will see yourself, because oftentimes you think there are these people who are up there because perhaps they're in a full-time ministry, and then there's everybody else. But when you look at the lives of these men, you're really going to see something that I think will really resonate with you. Now, if you're taking notes, my opening statement is every one of our lives will either serve as an example or a warning. An example to be followed, admired, and modeled, like Dr. Price's, or a warning of what happens when you compromise, when you don't make your family the priority, when you put work over your kids, when you yield to the flesh like every man in this room is tempted to do, when you try to fulfill legitimate desires, which are sexual, in illegitimate ways, like pornography. Every man in this room, our life will serve as an example or a warning. And my goal, my desire, is for my life to serve as an example. Now, you will see, unfortunately, that there's a pattern in the Bible that most men in the Bible, listen carefully, don't finish strong. Moses didn't finish strong. In the context, he didn't enter the promised land. It's estimated that when David had his affair with Bathsheba, he was 52. Solomon didn't finish strong, even though he was the wisest man and he had 1,000 women, and he had to write a journal about the folly of his life, calling it vanity, vanity. And he kept making this refrain, under the sun, and I tried this, under the sun, and I tried this. And his life was an expression that at the end, he didn't finish strong. And you know what? They usually started tripping right around the median age of the guys in this room. In their 40s and 50s, when perhaps you and I start looking at the death of a dream. And what happens when you see the death of a dream? You start to panic. And when you start to panic, you try to medicate that anxiety in unhealthy ways. And when you medicate the anxiety that life's presenting towards you in unhealthy ways, you make decisions that in retrospect, you look back and you say, what was I thinking? Now, you got to remember, when Satan tempts you, never focus on the object of what he's trying to tempt you with. Always, this is a key principle, always focus on what he's trying to get you to forfeit. So if he shows you the fruit, don't focus on the fruit, Adam and Eve, focus on the garden. If Satan's tempting you like he's tempting me, get your eyes off the object of the temptation and focus on what he's trying to get you to forfeit. You see, have you ever noticed that in the Bible there's no such, you never read of, and then Jesus came upon a certain blind woman and spat on the ground and rubbed in her eyes. And Jesus came upon a road of Jericho and he stumbled upon a blind woman who said, Master, no, you never read about blind women in the Bible, but you do read about blind men. Now, the reason is because if he can steal the vision of the man, Satan, then it's 2 for 1. It's the man and his wife. It's 3 for 1. It's the man, his wife, and his kids. It's 5 for 1. I just got married last October 11th, and I'm going to be a dad this Christmas Day. If Satan can get me off the path, it's not just 1-on-1 or 1 for 1. Now it's Chris Burge and Melanie Burge and our daughter. He can get more bang for the buck. So you never read about Satan targeting. You never read about blind women. You read about blind men because he gets so much more leverage out of it. You and I are in a spiritual street fight. This isn't mixed martial arts. This isn't boxing. There's no one who steps in. What ends the fight or brings the victory is realizing what Christ has done on the cross and exercising that authority as a believer. And this is a spiritual street fight. We have a foe who's trying to maim us. And check it out, y'all. This isn't even a fight for life or death. This is a fight for eternal life and eternal death. Because if I lose this fight, I won't be an example to my daughter who's born. I'll now be a warning. Sure, you mean that, Daddy? 100 series on his website, over 500 hours. He wrote that book about his rules of single, and then he left mom. I don't want nothing to do with that. It's no longer even life or death. It's eternal life and eternal death. So I give you that backdrop to help you understand why you feel the weight. There are spoils for the winner. The reason why you're fighting depression or fighting sexual temptation or your marriage is being challenged, it's because it's a fight, check it out, not for life or death, but eternal life and eternal death.